Welcome to Team Woolly Sheep Reviews. So what I'm going to do is I've checked the firmware, and the firmware, it comes, I don't know whether you can see, but it's EU LBT compliant. It is set up as LBT, and guess what, D16 and long range only. I'm a bit stuffed here because I need that D8 protocol. So I've set up my PC. What I'm going to do is go through quickly the software, because when you get one of these you might think, oh great, and then you find you can't bind it. It's going to be pretty damn annoying. I will show you the software, and I think it will help. Like I said, as I learn, you learn. So let me introduce you to the software. Right, as you can see, I'm doing this on an Apple Mac. So OpenTX, Google OpenTX, you will see welcome to opentx.org. Right, it'll take you to this page. Now you think, what the hell am I doing here? Now if I go the latest news down here, you will see there's a list of all the latest drivers. If I click on that, boom, it will say the latest version is OpenTX 2.2.0 RC15, and that's N368. Handy to remember those numbers, because the audio files and the memory card software needs to be all compatible and matching. So if I scroll down to the bottom, because I'm not really interested, you will see is the companion tool. The companion tool is the latest one that matches the latest firmware. Something to point out that in this in the OpenTX is you'll notice it's got SD card content, revision 15 RC15 2009. Now you need to download that and overwrite the files on your memory card. If you don't do that, it'll come up and say unexpected SD card version. So it's got to check, is a file on the SD card that tells you what version it is. So what I do, and which I'm going to do right now to make sure it works, is you select the files you want to copy, and then you copy them into the folders, and then it'll ask you, do you want to replace or keep? And if you go through and you merge them on Apple, you'll do a merge, so it'll actually save the newest ones. I believe you can do something similar with Windows. So it doesn't replace the folder, it just updates the files with the newer ones. And if there's already files, like I've got the sound effect packs in there, I don't want to lose them, so I'll let it copy them over. I update any files with newer ones, but leave the existing ones alone. So I'm going to do that now. But like I said, that's something to do after you've installed the companion. Then you really need to do that as well. So SD card content, it'll take you to this folder. Now you'll see that there's multiple versions. If I move the camera slightly, you'll see that there's multiple versions. Now when I started my radio, it said, oh, it's expecting to see version, and I believe it was my Taranis, I think it was version 9 was the latest one, so it's looking for that, and that's what it's asking for. So if you click on that, download it, save it to it's a zipped file, save it to your hard drive, and then unzip it into your sound folder on your Taranis memory card. You haven't got to take the card out, because if you remember, we selected the box for mass storage device. So, so it will exist in your folder. So because you've set it as a mass storage device, so it's no problem at all. Plug it in, drop it in, copy the files over, and it'll update any files. My launch pad, I should now have OpenTX Companion 2.2, which I will launch. Check for updates, no updates. So if you go there, I've already given myself a profile name. I've run this software previously on this machine. So the first thing we are going to do is the radio type. We're going to go down there and we're going to select FrSky Taranis X7 because that's what it is. So the X7 is the way to go. If you obviously got the X9D Plus, you would select that. If I select that, that's the profile it will take on board. So we're going to go Taranis X7. Now, as you can see then, there are a couple of options to tick here. What I would suggest is if you click mass storage, when you plug your Taranis into your computer, it will see it like a memory stick. So you can swap your audio files, etc. If you're going to use your Taranis with your game, your liftoff or whatever the thing is, you'll have to uncheck that. Otherwise, it'll keep seeing it as a mass storage device and not as a joystick controller for your game. There's a different font, the LUAC compiler. I'm going to turn that off because that's a feature that pops up into your menu structure. And the Lua script models, that's your pictures and what's not. You can select an image to go on your splash screen, etc, etc. You can select the mode. So there's a little bit of configuring there. When you go into application settings, you should put a tick into all the boxes. If you took it, because this is they're like a sort of beta testing software, and it's always better to look at the nightly builds and the companion nightly builds, so you get the latest firmware from the nightly builds. So stick with tick all the boxes, and then it will look for updates across the board. And then okay. At this moment in time, we have no transmitter plugged in. All right. To get into the firmware mode, you press and hold them together, and you press that button and then release. Press, release. No holding, no doing anything. And as you can see, right firmware, blah, 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 blah. Then you need mini USB, not a micro, the mini, which sockets underneath this rubber pad. Then plug it into your USB. Now if you've got a Windows machine, good luck. You need drivers. Now as you can see, going back there, it now says USB connected. I have now, because I've selected it as a mass storage device, it will see this as a mass storage device plugged in, which I've got. You can see Taranis plugged in there, and it's Untitled there. See, EEPROM firmware, blah blah blah, Untitled, and it's got, because I've got a memory card in there. You see in my radio, and it's also seeing the memory card. Right, it doesn't come with a memory card, I might add, so you need to get a micro SD card. So there's folders already in there. So anyway, ignore that. Now when I want to look at the firmware, I would select, if I hover over right, when I'm in the software, if I hover over the buttons, right firmware to radio. If I select that, it will say load firmware. So I select load, and I can select the actual files. Now if I've downloaded the files off the FrSky website, you can actually select them and manually do it there. Alright, that is one option, but we're not going to do that because we're going to check for the button upstairs, check for downloads, and you can check for upgrades. So when you check that, it will come through. It'll say firmware OpenTX mass storage device doesn't seem to have been downloaded. Release 2.22, 27th of the 4th, 10th is available. Do you want to download it now? We recommend, right? So I could actually download that and update the. So if I say yes, then it will download that. Check. There's one thing I forgot to say. this little box here, it says EU. When I hover over it, it says removes D8 FreeSky protocol support, which is not legal for use in the EU on radios sold after January the 1st, 2015. Oh, so this is the bit that takes the D8 protocol, because D8 is non-compliant with LBT. So that is the box. If that is ticked, you won't get D8 on your radio. If you untick, you'll be a very naughty boy, because you will reintroduce D8 onto your radio. Now that is illegal. You will go to prison and you will be in trouble. So be very careful. So EU, that is the one that deactivates. So for example purposes only, I'm going to leave it unchecked. So the EU will not be checked and it will install the D8 protocol. So I shall OK that. Now it's time to update the radio. If I hover over, it can back up radio files, write backup to radio, write firmware to radio, read firmware from radio. So I can copy down all the firmware and things. So if I want to save a backup, that's what I can do. So I will click this and it says flash firmware. I'm going to load, and there's the versions that's available, and it's 2.2 blah 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 blah, and so on so on so on. Check hardware compatibility, write to TX. So when I hit write, it will then write it to the well, I'll do it. Write to TX. You may panic and think you haven't done anything. Computer's crashed. What's it doing? It's thinking, it's preparing, it's talking to the radio, and it's about to write it. Because it's going through the USB. This laptop is USB 2 and it's a little bit slow. However, it's a Mac and Macs work very quickly. As you can see, flashing is done. Close. My radio is now updated. Enter.
Welcome to OpenTX. Throttle warning.
And then the version, if you look, my version now is 2.2 on version 368. Happy days. Right. And the date of this firmware is 10th of the 4th, 2017. So it is very, very, very current. I'll go into the model test and then I will go page. I will then scroll upwards till I get to, there you are, I've got D8, LR12 and D16 and then off. So I've now got the full package on there, so I can use my D8. So it's the EU compliant LBT, but I've re-enabled the D8 because I've invested a lot of money in the D8 receivers, and it's going to take me time to upgrade them all. I don't think there's firmware updates for the D4R2s as yet, but as I move on I will change them to S-Bus type. So that is basically it. Right, so I hope that was helpful. This is nice. This is nice. However, this is almost nice. It's like an Aldi advert. But I like this one more. No, I like this one more. I also like this one, but I do like this one more. These are nice radios. These are good quality radios. The gimbals on this with the upgrade is superb. I love it. Yeah, and that concludes it. So the next one, I'll be transferring some models off my baby onto my new baby, and that will be coming up shortly. So don't tell the wife, go buy one. Do it. Do it. You want it. You do.